To fully enjoy Give Me Mine, start at chapter 1 and follow through to the most current video. To enhance the story, narration may be slightly different than the actual story in the book. Get your copy today and follow along. Enjoy. The 7th month went by, and so did the next. And the farther she got to her due date, the less Janay saw of Scottie. The baby had more than enough of everything, but still something was missing. Scottie. Sometimes she was sick and her body would be sore, but at the same time, she kept it moving. She had to keep herself busy. The farther away her mind was from Scottie, the better. Wherever she went, people always commented on how pretty she looked during her pregnancy. But they had no idea how she was feeling inside. Scottie's absence and his bullshit was a lot to deal with. The only thing that kept her company and busy were her mother and her newfound talent. A few months ago, while sitting in the salon waiting to get a touch-up, she discovered something that she never knew existed. Sandra was late coming in that morning, so her whole schedule was backed up. After doing 2 crossword puzzles and flipping through 2 old magazines, Janay started to play with one of the mannequin heads the stylist used for practicing. She used a comb from her purse and some bobby pins and clips from Sandra's roll-around supply cart sitting next to her. She curled and she combed and she brushed, twisted, and did more curls. When the final outcome of her creation was complete, everyone in the salon was amazed by what she had done. She never knew that styling hair would be so easy for her. It was fun, too. Sandra had arrived and started on her first client. She even admired Janay's creative updo and made it known. "Girl, I know you did hair. That's cute," she said. Janay wanted to admit that it was a big surprise to herself, too. But instead, she just gave her beautician a friendly smile, and that was that. Ever since those 2 months, Janay spent all of her days and nights practicing on anyone who would let her. Now, while she was sitting in the salon waiting to be serviced, she kept both eyes wide open and took mental notes of how all those ladies did things. And that's what kept her mind off of Scottie. No one knew that doing hair was something that Janay just decided to do overnight. They didn't ask, and she didn't tell. But she did lead them to believe that she had been doing it forever. And she couldn't understand how doing hair just came so natural for her. But she thanked God, and she accepted it and ran with it. She figured that it must come from her weekly visits to Sandra's over the past 2.5 years and watching while waiting to get her own hair done. Her kitchen was transformed into her own personal salon in the day and back to her kitchen at night. There was styling gel, holding spray, combs and brushes, blow dryers, and everything else that fell under the hair category all over the place. She had all the women from her mother's 12-step program coming over after they saw the way that Janay hooked her mother's hair up. They started telling other people about Janay's work. It was important for her to keep Diane with a fresh do every 3 days. She was a walking advertisement for Janay's work. Janay still went to Sandra to get her own hair done. But every time someone would ask her who did her hair, she would lie and say, "I did." She thought that was the best way to build up her clientele. If they wanted the style that she was wearing, she would just duplicate Sandra's work for them. She did the majority of her clients for free because she didn't need the money. She just needed the practice, and that was more important to her. It helped her craft by working with so many different types of hair. She never expected it to take off the way it did, but she was happy. It kept her mind Scottie free. After her first month of starting, she had to step up her game to the next level. She eventually needed to have an appointment book just to keep track of everybody. People were referring her to other people, and sometimes she had people she didn't even know showing up at her house. That worried her a little, and she had to take extra precautions so that she would be safe. If she had been charging people, she would have made a nice amount of money from her 2 months of working. It wasn't about the money to Janay, though. She was just amazed with the fact that she could do it. And she kept a photo album handy filled with Polaroid snapshots of her work. Girls were bringing in pictures from magazine ads, and she would do their hair identical to the celebrity or the model, if not better. It made her smile every time to see how she would make those ladies smile. The way a fresh hairdo makes a woman feel is so priceless. When her 9th month came rolling around, she had to slow down due to her not being able to stand on her feet a lot. Her pregnancy brought about an exhaustion that Janay never felt before. All she wanted to do was sleep and have her every need met. She made a promise to all of her clients that as soon as she had the baby, she'd continue. They understood. Her feet were swollen bigger than her head, and the only shoes that she could wear were house shoes. Her appetite had picked up tremendously, and she kept her mother running back and forth to the grocery store. Sour cream and onion potato chips and Haagen-Dazs chocolate marshmallow ice cream together in one big bowl was her ultimate craving. And she had to have it at noon every day while watching Days of Our Lives. She was counting down the days until her due date so that she could have the baby, then start reshaping her figure immediately. Getting a good night's rest was also a problem for her because she always had a fresh hairdo and didn't want to ruin it. So she used her hand as a kickstand to prop up her head all night long. She wanted her baby's first sight of her mother to be beautiful. And to top it all off, she was going through that never again stage in her pregnancy that some first-time mothers go through. She swore that this would be her first and last kid. And she went through all the stages of being pregnant, and it was nothing like she had expected it to be. And she was determined not to let it slow her down, and nothing really changed until about her 8th month. And that's when she started to feel really uncomfortable, tired, annoyed, helpless, and depressed. But up until then, her daily and weekly routines remained the same. 2 weeks before her due date, she got a call from someone she hadn't heard from in weeks. It was the man that she had been paging for the past 2 weeks and didn't get a response from until he wanted something. His cell phone would go straight to his voicemail, and he knew that Janay didn't leave messages. It was Scottie, and he wanted her to drive for him. On the other end of the phone, Janay was furious that he didn't properly greet her like he should have. He didn't compliment her or ask how the baby was. And he didn't even try to make up a lie about why he wasn't answering his cell phone. And he just started asking for shit. She couldn't believe that he would have the nerve to ask her such a thing. So she began to curse him out over the phone. "You stupid motherfucker. Who do you think I am?" she screamed into the phone. "Why don't you ask one of them other bitches to do it? You know I'm about to have this baby, and you act like you don't even give a fuck. You can't even pick up the phone and call me back when I paid you just to see what I want. But now your sorry ass wants something from me. Where the hell you been for the past 2 weeks, and why these stupid assholes keep calling my house?" Janay screamed at him for 20 minutes, and he never said one word. She called him name after name and tried her hardest to push his buttons. But she failed, like always. His nonchalant attitude towards everything always made her nervous because she never knew what he was thinking. He was just too damn cool. He listened to her and let her vent without returning the hostility. He was on his cell phone downstairs, parked in front of her home. And she had no clue that he was outside waiting for her. Janay knew exactly what was coming next, and she was afraid of it. She was afraid that it would work just like it always did. And she was afraid that she'd be weak, like always. They both sat silently on the phone for a few minutes, and she counted down backwards from 5 to 1 in her head. 5, 4, then she breathed. 3, 2. Then right before she got to 1, she took a longer breath. 1. And he began right on cue. He did just what he usually did. Oh, baby, you know I love you.
You know I love you. You know I love you.
Why you cursing me out like that? I miss you. I miss both of my babies. You need to stop talking like that around my baby. Scottie sounded so sincere. You love me? He asked Janay, but she didn't answer him. Scottie asked her again. Girl, I know you hear me talking to you. I said, do you love your man? This time he put emphasis on it, and Janay began to smile, hoping that he didn't know it. I know you got a big-ass grin on your face, too, he jokingly said to her, and together they laughed. In the midst of their laughing, Janay answered him. Hell yeah, I love your stupid ass. So come on, I'm outside waiting for you. It worked like a charm. She threw on some pajamas and a pair of Air Max sneakers before she headed downstairs to his truck. First, she stopped at her car and grabbed her gun from under the driver's seat. She tossed it in the bottom of her Gucci bag and eased herself into the back seat of his truck. Before Scottie pulled away, he leaned over to Janay and pecked her softly on the lips. She appreciated his affection because she was overdue and needed it. But it grossed her out because he smelled like a woman's perfume. And she wanted to bring it to his attention, but Fonz was in the front seat. If she mentioned it now, it would start an argument with him, and he would just lie about it anyway. And she just grabbed a handful of Tic Tacs from her purse and tossed them into her mouth. The last time she drove for him, she promised herself that she wouldn't do it again. But he said he needed her. Nobody else knew the game like she did. And he didn't trust anybody else. Plus, the money was good, and she no longer had to depend on Scottie for financial help. And she was making her own money, and she was smart enough to have saved up enough for at least 3 rainy days. And she was set, and so was the baby. He had been training her and showing her just how it should be done ever since she was 15. And now it was a piece of cake. And she had to admit that she was pretty good at what she did. And she understood where Scottie was coming from when he told her that he didn't trust anybody else. But Janay still wanted out. Shortly after they met on that afternoon when she was 15, he began to groom her on how he wanted it done. How to be alert, how to be consistent, how to be prompt, and how to be fast. He used to tell her that this was her special talent and that God had put her on this earth especially for this. And that dumbass statement put her young 15-year-old mind at ease as Scottie manipulated her. And she was so dumb that she believed that bullshit too. Every time he gave her the share of money that was due to her, she would immediately throw it in a trunk until she was able to get her own bank account. And when the first trunk began to overflow to the point where it wouldn't close, she got a second one. And when the second one was full, she was old enough to get an account. She gathered all the money up and took it to North Shore Bank. Her total to date after 3 years of saving was $85,451.25. And she was in need of nothing, and she loved that feeling of freedom. Scottie had taken care of her just like he promised her that he would. And she still felt like she was earning her own money, though, because she no longer needed him. He needed her. Janay's only fear was telling Scottie that she no longer wanted to be involved in what the three of them had been doing for so long. And she just knew that he wouldn't take the news well, especially with the baby on the way and her doing hair now. She was sure that her finances would be straight with the money that she had saved and doing hair on the side. Her main goal was to just be the best mother that she could be and probably go back to school and get her GED. She didn't want her child's life to resemble hers in any way, whether that meant having Scottie around or not. And she sat back and thought about how she seriously didn't want to be a part of what they were doing anymore. And she just didn't want him to leave her and the baby, because Janay did love Scottie with all of her heart. But she would gladly let him leave and do his thing without her for the sake of their baby. He was the only man she ever loved. Janay was more than a good woman to him, and she always made sure that he had everything he needed. She was everything he needed, and they seemed to be the perfect team if you were on the outside looking in. And she had dissed her own mother for him and held him down like a woman should. But all of that couldn't keep him from straying. Janay knew that Scottie had other bitches. And even though he slept around on her, Janay knew that she was number one in his book. No matter what the jealous girls would say in the salons and in the nail shops all around town. Regardless of how many other chicks he was seen with, or even if you saw someone else driving one of his cars. So what? If she wasn't Janay, she meant absolutely nothing at all to Scottie. And Janay was willing to bet any amount of money on that. He was her Scottie.
Hit that like, subscribe if you with it. I appreciate. I wanna tell you a story.